Fucking hell, you changed up, all the rings and makeup, walking like it's blue blood running through your veins. But if I'm not mistaken, you don't know what pain is. Just a couple of breakups, crying on the train home. I wanted to zone in on that actually second part of you don't know what pain is.
Yeah.
Just a couple of breakups, crying on the train home.
We've got a lot to unpack. I guess, like, especially with the line, you don't know what pain is, it kind of comes from that place of maybe being made to feel you don't deserve to complain about things when you're doing stuff that you said you've always wanted to do, or that maybe people around you like are feeling inspired by. But it's like there's still those painful moments, like, and I guess kind of the whole just a couple breakups is like the minimizing of it in the way that you might feel like other people, or that I have felt like other people have done, sometimes to me, sometimes to other people around me, that are like doing things that are publicly perceived to be like just like really amazing. And it's like, oh, like, and a phrase I hear a lot is you're doing bits, and it's like, yeah, I am, but like there's other pillars of life other than like, hey, like catch me here, or like, oh, my show just sold out. It's like, yeah, I be crying sometimes, because like if it's not a heartbreak, like sometimes it's just like working through like old wounds, and that can be a very emotional process. Or it might be like you falling out with a family member, or maybe you're having a tight month and you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna make this rent, child. Like it's just like a lot of things still happen that are like
Not on the grid,
that are not on the grid, that are still like painful and frustrating. And even if they're not like things that are actively happening, I just think the process of continuously like healing from things can be a very tumultuous one. And so it's like when people don't know you and think like, oh, you don't know what pain is. Or even I've been told a couple times, I remember once a social worker said to me like, oh, like I was like, oh, I think I'm ready to go into therapy. And then they were like, yeah, you don't seem like somebody that needs therapy, like your head is very screwed on your shoulders. And like it kind of felt like it was like minimizing like the effects of things that I've like experienced in life. And I was just like, I don't know, it really frustrated me at the time. And I guess that kind of came up when I was writing the verse. And then just other examples of when people have made me just feel like either you're not feeling any painful things because you're smiling online, or when I meet you, you're mad bubbly. But I'm like, this is why I write these songs, because there has to be an outlet for these other things. Because day to day, I feel like I'm just quite a bubbly person. So a lot of people are just like, yeah, you know, like either you don't know what pain is, or you don't experience it that often. So
you touched on going into care and you know, having a social worker, and one of the things you prefaced the song was about sort of survivor's guilt. So could you maybe tell me a little bit about your childhood and kind of sort of in reference to the songs as well? Yeah,
sure. Like I guess I had a pretty like shaky start to life. Like when I was growing up, I was like in and out of care. Like my family was really big, and I guess like there would be times where my parents would get a bit like overwhelmed by that, all that responsibility and things. Is really hard raising so many kids. And so like we went into care, then we went back home, then we went back into care again. So it was like very like up and down. And then the final time when we went into care, we didn't go back home. So I spent like the majority of like my teenage years and into some of like my early 20s like in foster care. And it was really interesting like going through school, because like when I did go into care, I was in year 9, and I remember it was so weird, like because they picked us up like on like what they said was like an emergency, when they literally picked us up from school. So everyone,
you don't go back.
We didn't go back.
Yes,
we didn't go back home. So like I went in my school uniform. I went to school. I thought it was a normal day. And then like we got you know, they send these little like notes from reception to like come down to reception. So we got me and my sisters like got a note to come to reception, and I was like, oh, like maybe they're going to invite us on a school trip or something. I thought it was going to be something cool like that. And we're sitting in reception for time, and then we went into this other room, and these social workers and like police were in there like waiting, and like we had done, they like interviewed us, and like obviously we were just kind of like, well, we want to go home, so we're just gonna like, everything's chill, like everything's Gucci, like why are you here for us, like and then obviously they told us like that like we weren't going home, like we were going like now, and they were like because they had to like do it like as a matter of urgency. They just like took us in police cars. So the next week when I came into school, people were like, oh, like what happened? Did you do something? I was like, no, I don't want to talk about it. But then after a while, I realized that when I stopped being like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, then I was like, oh, well, no one can use it against me. Because even the fact that I'm like, oh, my social worker, like it's a normal day, it's like part of it is because I've got used to that being a part of my life. Like I'm still pretty like cool with my parents, I still speak to them, but I'm also like have a really good relationship with my foster mum as well. So it's like it's I've made it a normal part of my experience, because I'm like nobody can use it against me, because it's already a normal thing. Like no one can say, well, like, because I know some young people, they're like, if they go into care, they're like, I don't want to talk about it, or sometimes they won't even like tell like partners or friends.
And not told anybody.
We could have gone back the next week and not told anybody, and I didn't tell people for like at least the first couple months. And I remember my English teacher was like, I can see there's a lot going on in your life, maybe start journaling. And she gave me this exercise book, and that's when I started journaling, and now I've been journaling for like 10 years, which is like a whole other thing. But like, yeah, like I had a lot going on like throughout school and like my late teens and my early 20s as well. But I don't actually have any real regrets about the experience, because I'm like, it's kind of led me to where I am now. But I guess like what does make me feel a bit bad sometimes is seeing the other people. So for example, like seeing how my parents like were processing it when we all left, and for years like it was really hard for them. And even now I don't think it's the easiest thing to really deep, like sometimes
a big portion of your life with them was not in the way that they would have hoped. Exactly.
And it's like, even for me, it's really weird, because I'm like, now I'm like navigating how to have like a parent-child relationship like with my parents, because I'm like, okay, the last time I lived with you guys I was 13, 14, like I'm 24 now. So it's like they're having to get used to having an adult child, which they didn't get to experience the linear process of me growing up, and I didn't get to experience the linear process of having them in my life. And just having things like, telling my mom about like when I'm experiencing things with like relationships, and like maybe having my dad like give me the self-confidence to make sure I like respect myself in these relationships, for example. These are all things I had to learn like by myself, and then also figure out just how to navigate having like a normal like relationship with my parents. And it's still a lot of learning I'm doing now.
You said you were unpacking.
I'm still unpacking a lot. Like I started therapy like a couple years ago, and I finished that. But I'm like, now that I've done like a big chunk of healing there, I do want to start it again, because I'm like, there's always debris that's left after you like do any form of healing, if that makes sense. It's like you've cleansed the wound, but there's still like healing and scabs and stuff. So I'm just like, that's the next phase.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like, analogy of way you spoke about it, and I just think it's such a hidden part of society.
Yeah,
it's very rare to meet somebody that has been in care, but they
think it's Stacey Beaker. They think it's
Tracy Beaker. I said Stacey Beaker.
They think
that's
it's
the
Tracy,
prequel.
Yeah, Stacey Beaker is the prequel. No, literally, when I was in school, I remember like I'd get so many questions like, oh, is it like Tracy Beaker, or like, why didn't you go back home? Like, oh, if it was me, I wouldn't let them. What happened? They would be like, what happened? Or they'd be like, obviously, because like my family, like we're Nigerian, so like sometimes if like any aunties would hear about it, like if I was in the hairdressers, they'd be like, oh, is that your mum? Like when my foster carer would come to pick me up, and I'd be like, no. They'd be like, oh, where's your mum? Is she not in the country? And I'm like, she is. And it's like, oh, it's a shame. And I'm like, like enough, like leave me alone. And then like kids at school being like, oh, if it was me, I wouldn't let anyone like take me away from my parents, type of thing. So I'd feel like really guilty about that, because it's like maybe I didn't like do my side of things to make sure I could have a normal life at home. But then it's like, it's so many factors, and I was literally a kid, like I was 13, like
I mean, my mum works in education, and it's literally what she does, and it's very rare that it gets to that stage. But you never hear from the experience of the child. She'd come home and be like, the police had to come today. We had to take the kids to a separate room. They had to be interviewed. The parents are like, where's what? It's a lot. It's intense. So for you to have actually, to hear you haven't actually gone through it, and it not just be this kind of story, is it's really profound, I think. And with the survivor's guilt, which is what you kind of talk a lot about through this song, because you've I guess on like, yeah, okay, maybe on the surface it looks like you've normalized it, you're doing all the steps, you maybe statistically out of the kids that have gone into care, you are doing better than most. Is there some guilt within that?
There is, because of the fact that, as you said, like there are a lot of kids and like young people that go through care and don't come out on the other end like with some sense of self still, or like the desire to turn their lives around, or even if they do have the desire, they may be still so like wrapped up in the pain of the experience that it's really hard to shake that off.